ladies and gentlemen, when choosing the topic of today's speech, I decided to discuss issues related to the provisions in force in Poland regarding the functioning of the State Central Bank, which in the context of Poland's accession of the Eurozone are indicated as inconsistent with EU law. This issue is most often raised in relation to Poland's currently insufficient level of implementation of the convergence criteria, but the first of the indicated issues also requires attention due to several important aspects that are indicated as requiring adaptation to EU regulation. Poland joined to EU in 2004 using the so-called derogation rules, thereby committing to adapting the common currency in the future. In the first period of European integration, significant efforts were made to adapt Polish regulations to the required EU standards and activities related to meeting the convergence criteria. In the process of European integration, numerous actions were undertaken in Poland related in the discussed scope to changes in the functioning of the Central Bank of the States and those that were to lead to inclusion in the single monetary and currency policy conducted within the European system of central banks. The process of European integration was primarily related to the adoption of Polish legal solutions in the field of banking with the EU regulations, and thus the need for extensive legislative changes. In case of central bank institutions, these changes concerned in particular the provisions of the 1997 Act of the National Bank of Poland, which is still in force today, including, among others, issues of the legal station of the central bank and independence. The strengthening of the independence of the National Bank of Poland was to be facilitated by solutions regarding the principle of cooperation between the Central Bank of States authorities and the terms of office of members of the Monetary Policy Council and the financial management of the NBP. The principle of banking supervision were also changed. In this respect, the solution adopted was to separate the tasks of the central bank related to monetary policy from the exercise of banking supervision. First of all, solutions were adapted to free the zloty exchange rate. The rules for implementing open market operation and the reserve requirement system were changed. Changes were introduced in the scope of credit and deposit operations. They concerned, among others, a Lombard loan, for which the time horizon was shortened to 1 day. Moreover, an end-of-day deposit facility was introduced for all banks with current accounts at the NBP. As a monetary policy instrument allowing for the absorption of excessive liquidity in the money market, changes in the NBP interest rates concerned the reference rate, which ceased to function as an instrument determining the minimum level of rates on the deposit market. However, it related the role of an instrument informing about the current direction of the central bank's policy and determining the minimum interest rate on basic open market operation. To determine the lower limits of fluctuation in interbank market interest rate, the NBP introduced the deposit rate. The Lombard rate and the deposit rate were to constitute respectively the upper and lower limits of fluctuations in one-day deposits on the interbank market. the adjustment of banking regulation as part of the initial stage of the European integration process involve the need to amend many applicable laws or adapt new legal regulations. Legislative changes covered basic legal acts, setting the framework for the functioning of the banking sector in Poland and numerous regulations. Despite extensive legislative changes and the ongoing adaptation of Polish law to EU requirements, the latest convergence reports of the European Commission and the European Central Bank from 2022 indicate the need to continue this process. The reports draw attention to the need to introduce numerous changes, primarily in the scope of the provisions of the Constitution of the Republic of Poland and the Act of the National Bank of Poland. The first issue requiring attention in the independence of the central bank at the institutional, personal and financial level. The reports indicated the need to adapt the provisions of the Polish Act regulating the principle of operating of the central bank of the states to the requirements of Article 130 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union and Article 7 of the Statute of the European System of Central Banks and of the European Central Bank. This act does not prohibit the National Bank of Poland or members of its decision-making bodies from seeking or receiving instructions from external bodies. This act also does not expressly prohibit the government administration from taking actions that would be related to exerting influence of members of the NBP's decision-making bodies in a situation where this may affect the central bank's performance of tasks related to participation in the ESCB. In the context of adaptation to Article 130 of the Treaty and Article 7 of the ESCB and ECB statute, attention was also paid to the principles of representing the interest of the Republic of Poland by the President of NBP in international banking institution and submitting draft monetary policy assumption by the President of NBP to the Council of Ministers and the Minister of Finance. Another issue regarding institutional independence that requires clarification are the competences of the Supreme Audit Office implemented on the basis of the Article 203, Section 1 Constitution of the Republic of Poland related to controlling the activities of the National Bank of Poland from the point of view of its legality, economy, expediency and reliability. The convergence reports control with respect to the aspects of institutional independence of the NBP bodies and ensure that when auditing the activities of the NBP, the purposefulness criterion used by the Supreme Audit Office does not extend to the assessment of its activities related to the main objective of maintaining of the price stability. In practice, the implementation of the assumptions that are the basis for the personal independence of the person acting as a president of the NBP and members of collegial bodies requires, in accordance with the guidelines covered by the reports, a change in the provisions regarding their dismissal from the position and the adaptation of these provisions to the requirements of Article 14, Section 2 of the Statute of the ESCB and ECB. In the context of financial independence, attention was paid to the provisions of the Act of the National Bank of Poland regarding the remuneration of NBP employees and the restriction applicable in this respect. Regulatory changes leading to pay cuts have been identified in the Convergence report as being incompatible with the principle of financial independence if they adversely affect the ability of the central bank of a country to recruit and retain staff in order to independently perform the tasks imposed by the Treaty on European Union and the Statute of the ESCB and ECB. The inconsistency of national regulations was also demonstrated in the scope of the rules applied in the NBP's activities for transmitting information to external entities, which concerns the disposal of data obtained from various entities under Article 23 of the Act on the National Bank of Poland. The ECB's convergence reports noted that disclosure in information could in such a case affect compliance with the data protection rules concerned by the principle confidentially applicable at the ESCB. In terms of information protection issues, attention was also paid to the above-mentioned competences exercised by the Supreme Audit Office pursuant to Article 203, Section 1 of the Constitution of the Republic of Poland. The Supreme Audit Office is in exercising its powers related to auditing the activities of the NBP. Has wide access to protected document and information. Attention is drawn to the need for change of the regulation that would provide the Supreme Audit Office with access to documents and confidential information in the course of its audits. But is this case limiting access to information necessary to ensure the performance of the Supreme Audit Office's statutory tasks? An important issue that has been pointed out, the term of non-compliance of national regulation with the provisions of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, are also the rules for granting refinancing loans to banks. The ECB convergence reports indicate the need to introduce more explicit safeguard measures that will apply to all financial institutions to which NBP provides support to replenish their monetary resources. The aspects of the temporary nature of such support and its targeting only to entities not at risk of insolvency also needs to be emphasized in the applicable regulations. Another issue covered by convergence reports is the legal integration of national central banks with the euro system. In this respect, attention was drawn to the need to change the provisions of the Act on the National Bank of Poland, specifying of basic objective of the NBP. Pursuant to Article 3, Section 1 of the Act on the National Bank of Poland, it is to maintain a stable price level while supporting the government's economic policy, as long as this does not limit the basic objective of the NBP. This provision was found inconsistent with Article 127, Section 1 of the Treaty and Article 2 of the Statute of the ESCB and the ECB, due to the lack of reference to the issue of supporting general EU economic policies. as regards the provisions regulating the principles of NBP's performance of tasks related to the conduct of monetary policy and the principles of implementing the issuance function, the inconsistency was indicated in related to the Article 227 of the Constitution of the Republic of Poland and several provisions of the Act on the National Bank of Poland, which, when defining this category of tasks, do not recognize the powers of the ECB in this respect. As already noted above, many actions were initially taken in order to meet all the conditions for quick accession to the Eurozone. However, the financial crisis of 2008 fundamentally changed the assessment of the benefits and possible threat related to the adoption of the common currency. Poland and other member states outside the Eurozone, analyzing the factors influencing the financial difficulties and the recession that affected the countries operating within the Eurozone, reinforced the belief that decision in this regard should be postponed. It is also related to uncertainty about the future of the EU, which intensified when Great Britain left it. Decisions in this area are, of course, influenced by the current uncertain situation in Europe and around the world, which is the result of many complex factors. Regardless of the fact that the expectations for faster adoption of the euro have become stronger in recent years, Poland is currently not taking any decisive steps to adopt the euro, also at the legislative level. It should be noted as well that its accession to the Eurozone is not possible at the moment due to the insufficient degree of implementation of the related conditions, especially the convergence criteria. Thank you for your attention.